Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. My name is Emily Fraser-Rath, and I'm Executive Director of Education Initiatives for the BGHRA. And it's my honor and privilege to welcome you all to our second keynote today. I'm not going to waste very much time here at the beginning, but I would like to introduce you to our honored guest and thank you all for joining us. At any point, if you would like to ask a question, which we'll have plenty of time for Q&A following the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Mariama Diagne, who is a dance scholar, trained as a dancer at the Dance Theater of Harlem in New York City. She took up the study of theater, media, and music at the University of Bayreuth after her professional dance practice and graduated with a master's and doctorate in dance studies from the Free University of Berlin. In 2019, her book Schweres Schweben, or Heavy Hovering, was published, in which she contextualized qualities of gravity and juxtaposed them with Pina Bausch's movement language. Her study was awarded the Tiberius Prize of the Berlin Universities in 2019 and the Dance Science Prize in Nordrhein-Westfalen in 2021. After research and teaching in Berlin and in Vienna, she has been conducting research since 2022 at the Collaborative Research Center 1512 Intervening Arts at the Free University of Berlin. In her work, she investigates the intertwining of theory and practice and sets her focus on questions regarding subaltern perspectives and practices on decanonizations or recanonizations. With a poetological approach and anti-colonial rereadings of cultural history, she dedicates her work to procedures of diasporic writing within and alongside the canon of the performing arts and the arts in general and their social location. As a freelance dramaturge, she accompanies artists in performance and text, among others at the Bauhaus Neunienstraße, Berlin, in the context of anti-colonial post-migrant perspectives. From 2019 to 2023, she chaired the board of the Gesellschaft für Tanzforschung. She has been a member of the UNESCO Commission for National Intangible Cultural Heritage since 2022, and a member of the jury for the German Dance Award since 2023. So with that, I'd like to turn things over to our guest and welcome you all again. Again, if you have questions, please enter them in the Q&A function and we'll get to them following the presentation.
Thank you, Emily, a lot for that warm welcome, and also a great thanks to be invited as a keynote speaker to this annual conference themed on joy and pain. It's my first keynote here at the conference, and it's my first speaking here at the conference, and I feel very honored about it in very many ways, especially being a Black German dance scholar. And in my kind of like in terms of career paths, in my beginnings, even though that I have a PhD, since we all know it's always a challenge to stay in your field if you are trying to find a position in the field. So I'm very honored to speak today. So there are many ways to start speaking about Black heritage and about creating histories and performance that include biographies, artistic pathways, and patterns shaped by voices and bodies with an African diasporic belonging. So we have a great amount of dancers and performance makers, venues, thinkers within the Afro and non-Caucasian diaspora in Germany. How to address it? I would like to borrow words from Alice Hasters, an artistic and activist voice that I not only like to follow in her own books, but also in the beautiful forewords she contributed to publications like the German translation of Toni Morrison's Sehr blaue Augen. In her foreword for the German version of Tiffany Ann Florbill's book Black Germany, Schwarz-Deutsch feministisch, die Geschichte einer Bewegung, published in 2023, she writes, "For me, this book is indispensable. On the one hand, to understand as an author what kind of tradition I'm inscribing myself into. On the other hand, as a Black woman in Germany, to realize that the exploration and struggle for Black German identities has a long history that gives me the privilege of not having to start from scratch." End of quote. So where Alice Hasters starts is the point where I am allowed to start. Biographical paths of Black authors from Germany are numerous. The network is overwhelming. But still, as Peggy Piesche just elaborated on, representation, visibility, and knowledge that creates future thought is not embedded in institutional establishments. Similar questions do arise, apart from nationality or ethnicity or the status of subalternization within the arts. Dance is, until today, not considered as an art form that produces thought like film, fine arts, and music. A quite strong tradition in German dance history, though, had been to connect thought making and historiographical approaches with biographies of single artists. Modern dance, postmodern dance. During the 2000s, this changed a bit with genres like Konzepttanz, zeitgenössischer Tanz, concept dance, contemporary dance, even though in Germany, contemporary dance is something different than, for example, in the US. Starting with biographies can be interesting, but also a trap, because it narrows the artistic pathway down to a single story of actually many voices and bodies visible and active at the same time. So in the end, it's not an issue for a normative perspective that can rely on an ethnicity with an unspoken melanin percentage. Currently, an overview, a summary of the status quo of the many Afro and non-Caucasian diasporan performative artists working in Germany doesn't exist. Not even in Berlin, it is possible to name artists in the African diaspora with instant knowledge about their work, their artistic approach, the places they perform or present performances, the training or movement education they refer to or prefer to not to do so, the artistic collaborations they can be seen within. So in German, we would say ein absolutes Forschungsdesiderat. So it's a gap in research. At the same time, exactly this gap might be an opportunity. The danger of an ontology shaped by biographical research is connected to this lack of research. A catalog of works done by artists that are considered subaltern would simultaneously flow into an algorithm from which there is no escape. So it is important to pay attention who is shaping this catalog, who is making the catalog. The price for this catalog could be a loss of the right to opacity, which Edouard Glissant demanded. Why am I addressing this thought? My question is where to start, whom to pick and shed light on when talking about all the diversity of Afro-diasporan performance artists in Germany, their influences, their artistic ancestors, the venues they are present and visible. What, maybe at least for now, could be a solution? For this talk, I'm thinking about a roundabout thinking. Roundabout way to say means umständlich ausgedrückt in German, expressed with the great possibility of not being understood. But a roundabout thinking within diasporan constellations could open up the positive sides of a puzzledness, many pathways connected to one circle of options, slowing down before making the decision or taking the next exit or path. Might be start to share my screen. How about a magic roundabout that enables a form of multi-directional memory of Black German heritage? So with this keynote, I may invite you to a roundabout of thoughts with puzzled pathways of performative answers to a phenomenon called the white shadows, weiße Schatten. I will start with sound.
Mr. Backlash, who do you think I am? You raise my taxes and freeze my wages, send my only son to Vietnam. You give me second-class houses, second-class schools. I know you think that all colored people are just second-class fools. Mr. Backlash, I'm gonna leave you with the blues. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. When I try to find a job to earn a little cash, all you got to offer is your mean old white backlash. The world is big, big and bright and round. It's full of other folks like me who are black, yellow, beige, and brown. Mr. Backlash, I'm gonna leave you with the blues. Yes, I am. Yes, I
What I just played for you is the song Backlash Blues from Nina Simone, a recording live at the Harlem Culture Festival in 1969. It's a festival that took place at the same time at Woodstock, but didn't get any mentioning like Woodstock. And that's actually where my question about the white shadow hits, or where it connects to the German dance scene or the German artistic scene. It is about who gets to make visible and who does not. So the recording the recording comes from the playlist from the movie Summer of Soul, or When the Revolution Could Not Be Televised. This is a documentary of the Harlem Culture Festival that just got to be seen. I think it was like in 2022. Please correct me if I'm wrong with that date, by DJ Questlove, who made this documentary movie. But it's now not so much about the movie or Summer of Soul. It is more about what is this white shadow and what is Mr. Backlash. And with the following, I want to give a little explanation. My talk is called White Shadow, and the term white shadow is borrowed by Stephanie Laya Okongo, who wrote a poem called White Shadow. Laya Okongo is a Black intersectional freelancer living in Berlin. She is an artist, author, poet, curator, multiplier, photographer, activist, workshop teamer, and singer. In 2009, she published her autobiography, Kalunga's Child. And since 2014, she has curated and moderated the monthly spoken word event series, One Word Poetry Night in Berlin. Laya lives letters. Based on her experiences, she deals with topics such as decolonization, dream, self-love, healing, privilege, identities, and here and there with a warm strawberry ice cream. Artistically and politically, she is connected to her ancestors, such as Audre Lorde and Nina Simone. Her bed lives in Berlin, as she writes. The book I'm showing here is called in German Buchstabengefühle, eine poetische Einmischung, Feelings in Letters, a poetic intervention, and it is, according to Laya, written for everyone as a declaration of love, as a tender reminder, as a protest. The poems describe what words, what letters can make possible. It is about death of roots. It is about privileges. It is about finding responsibility in the heart, about vastness, silence, and love. So I picked this poem, Weiße Schatten. It goes, I have a white shadow. He standardizes me, measures me, weighs me, calculates me. I have a white shadow. He tells me who or what is beautiful, and who or what is smart, and who or what is efficient, useful, logical. I have a white shadow. He dresses me, feeds me, educates me. I have a white shadow. Now I'm lost in the lines. Every day I send him away, but he does not leave me. I have a white shadow. What if I turn to him? The poem became important to me not just because it made me think about the white shadow I might have, but the poem made me think about how can I work with the poem, with the lines and the thoughts of Laya Okongo to talk about performance, to talk about being present on a stage, being seen, or being invisible, or having to play a role that is set but not connected to my own story or stories that I could tell. So if we remember the song, Mr. Backlash Blues, or Mr. Backlash, who is recalled in Nina Simone's song, there is a connection. So Mr. Backlash is the one that keeps Nina Simone, or the I in her song, searching, keeps her waiting, calculates her, measures her, standardizes her. So the poem of Laya Okongo somehow connects beautifully to Nina Simone's song. Mr. Backlash and the white shadow are one and the same phenomenon of pain that needs to be confronted, I think, with poetic steps of healing, joy, and resistance. Because Mr. Backlash and or the white shadows standardize, measure, weigh, calculate, qualify a body's beauty, intellect, efficiency, benefit, logic, appearance, nutrition, and knowledge. And therefore, they impersonate a violent quality of European modernism and aesthetics. We see here in the following picture maybe the start of what these modernist aesthetics created later. It is the Marche Rapide, Trois Noirs, shot at the ethnographic exhibition of West Africa 1895 in Paris by photographer Etienne Jules Marais and Félix Regnault. It is used as critical material by cultural sociologist Erhard Schüttpelz, who starts his essay on body techniques from 2010 with an interesting perspective towards the European distinction between body technique and natural movement. The movements of the exhibited persons that you see on the right side were not considered as a body technique, but as native behavior. Filmmakers like Marais and his studies on capturing movements in smallest intervals had a great impact not only on film and its research, but also especially on dance and European dance research. In respect to the gaze, it is the instrument that here also catches my attention, an instrument that prepared the Western gaze. Marais mechanized the process of recording time by atomizing the movements of objects, animals, and humans in action by creating tools and mechanisms like the chronophotographic gun. This tool was capable of shooting images at an interval of 1/12 of a second, making visual records of movement, shaping the way we see until today. Today, images of movements, bombs detonating in residential areas leave us alone with an impression of human bodies trapped in these atomized movements and frozen movements. So the capturizing, colonializing gaze, when not shifted completely, will always be bound to this perspective. And I put these two pictures together to make visible how the right side, the jumps of a Wolof, a Pearl, and a Diola were actually shot. So they were jumping, as we can see here, while Marais was holding this photographic gun. So it was not like the nice photo camera we have today. It was really a gun. So how does it feel when you jump in front of a gun, not knowing if it does shoot or if it just makes a photo? Modernist critique gets more diverse, shaped by strong voices like Tina Camp on Black Gaze, how artists change the way we see. Or one I would like to present, Ruswana Bradley, who just last year published her book Anti-Aesthetics, Black Aesthesis and the Critique of Form, where she highlights the notion of that it's not about aesthetics of seeing or making what you see as an object, but aesthesis in terms of making visible what you see is moving you at the same time. So seeing in context and sensing. Born in Kenya and raised in the UK, Germany, Poland, and Tanzania, and the US, she goes one step further by doing an art critique investigating form shape, reflecting Western art history, in which the shadow, for example, has an important aspect in making and curating art and art history. With that in mind, Mr. Backlash and the White Shadows subalternize. And in doing so, they create a radius of violence. I quote here Caroline Emke, a German author and activist living here in Germany and doing research or publishing on violence, especially violence against subaltern persons. For me, being subaltern is a very problematic turn of thought, because poetic thinking like Mr. Backlash or the White Shadow reveal also being subaltern is performative and physical. It is about people and their relationships to each other, to their environment and their history. No one is born subaltern. People are being subalternized, but not subaltern by just being. So if we talk about a radius of violence, it means that once you experience violence, for example, in a discriminatory way, this shapes your sense of walking through a future in a different way. Caroline Emke says, anyone who has ever been in it, the radius of violence, recognizes its shadows early on. Once you've been in it, you not only avoid the violence, but also the tiny hints beforehand. Once you've been there, you can't stand the way it is glossed over, played down, trivialized, justified, denied, repressed, charged with supposedly good reasons or noble motives. End of quote. And I think that's exactly where Layao Congo and Nina Simone are relevant with their artistic voices about violence. So now I would like, with this preface, come to the performative aspect of my talk. I would like to start with a piece called Worn and Felt. It's a piece set in darkness as a condition for the experience of movement. The transgender performer Swarsimir Clark designed the performance space in Berlin's Sophienseele as a shadow chamber without light. With the room completely darkened, the performers' movements could only be experienced by touching their bodies. By dispensing the stage lighting, it required for the silhouettes of the bodies for the performance dichotomies such as female, weak, male, superior, observer versus performer, or dark versus light or clear, and temporarily dissolved them. It's a non-visual dance piece about racism, resilience, and community building. Because racism affects everyone, whether experienced, internalized, applied, or ignored, as Swarsimir Clark says. Our feelings are our most genuine path to acknowledge. We must examine them for new ways of understanding of our experiences. This is how new visions begin. Quoting Audre Lorde. My experience in this piece, when I was taking part at Worn and Felt, I was slowly getting used to the dark space, seeing shapes, being remembered at the Greek etymology. Skia is the word for shadow in Greek, form, shape, but also the infinite dark space, the underworld. Following one performer through the space was my task. Touch became difficult to me, not wanting to be touched, not wanting to touch, somehow. My body needed to adapt to touch as well as to darkness. Then there was a moment at a wall in the room. The performer I was following started whispering, shouting out words that hurt, that reminded at verbal violence against a Black body. Also words that would command correct discipline. I don't remember the exact phrases. I remember the feeling of discomfort. The discomfort did arise from listening to the words in the dark, from experiencing movement and touch without the control of sight. And even if I would have the words at hand, I would not want to recall them. Now, here, dislocated from the performative setting, on screen, being seen. I prefer the right of opacity for myself and the option of protection for others. Still, there was a healing aspect at the performance that took place much later. From Mr. Backlash and the White Shadow, healing arose and joy came with it. The performer I was following in the piece Worn and Felt was Nashika Natural. Nashika Natural is a multidisciplinary artist, a dancer, choreographer from Louisiana, working with sound and visual art mediums, exploring subjects relating to identity, ritual, futurism, play, and improvisation. And her work incorporates the use of voice, collage, found objects, textiles, and masking. Her work has been shown all over the place in Berlin, for example, at Ballhaus Nauninstraße, Hau Hebel am Ufer, but also in Hamburg, Kampnagel, or in London, Sadler's Wells, or again in Berlin, Theater ohne Namen, and many others. Most recently, Nashville was 2022 artist in residence at Black Rock, Senegal. And she's currently a member of the Schauspielhaus Zürich Dance Ensemble. I, in the beginning, said biographical research has its problems. And at the same time, it is difficult to find a red thread or a line or a circle how to present the works of artists. So what I try here to do is to pick up from the performer I didn't know and I didn't see in the piece Worn and Felt, and bring her into light, but with a different perspective. So I will now show works from Nashika Nashville, not from her performing in Worn and Felt, but from her being a performer in Berlin, a choreographer in Berlin, and someone who is connected to a certain dance, German dance scene here in Berlin. So what follows now is a little collection of artistic examples, how artists here in Berlin, performative artists, deal with questions about racism, about joy and healing, about being a Black German artist or being a Black artist, an Afro-diasporan artist in Berlin, being confronted with the issues here in Berlin, as we, for example, can see on this picture in the piece where I not put the title in, the piece Cyclops, where it was also about the objects, the stolen objects that are stored here in museums in Berlin. I will show you a little bit of a trailer of that piece and say something about it after.
The movement called time is based upon 2. In the English alphabet, 2 is 10x from Z, which is a non-curved 2. Z then is equal to 2 because the first is the last. The last in alphabet numerical form is 2 because the first, being Z, is 2. The way to true living life is the phonetic of 2, which is 2 because the way 2 is the way out, and the way out is the way 2. The way 2 is the way 2 and 2.
What the trailer showed is an example of how not just Nashika Nashville thinks and works, but also the photographer and performer Zede Paiva. Zede Paiva and Nashika Nashville performed at Ballhaus Nauninstraße. And this is not just a venue where they perform. Ballhaus Nauninstraße is a theater for post-migrant perspectives that not just allows to experiment or develop perspectives from a Black diaspora, but also gives the possibility to work in each part of a theater with post-migrant people, with people, voices, and perspectives from a non-Caucasian diaspora. So this means at this theater that the gaze that is there during rehearsals, the gaze that is there during developing a piece is not the white gaze, is not the white shadow, and is not Mr. Backlash. So this piece was conceived by Zede Paiva, who is also at the same time photographing and videographing every other piece at the Ballhaus Nauninstraße. The light design comes from Raquel Rosidelte, who is also making the light for many other pieces. So that means that whoever does the light or whoever is maybe part of the dramaturgical team also knows other works from Ballhaus Nauninstraße, which means there is a knowledge transfer going on for each production. This production, Cyclops, was about in this production, Zede Paiva brought together his experiences as actor, dancer, photographer, and video artist. So it's an intermediate performances that also highlights this aspect of algorithms that I just mentioned, but also the question of how could be something like a Black mathematics look like? How can we change algorithms by intervening into this wide concept of it? So what they do is to distort the post-colonial visual order. Images are superimposed on bodies. They glide over walls, people, things, and the images weigh down, overlap, transform. And what we call reality is a collage of image and matter, with the question, who produces the images, for whom, for what purpose? So the cameras are made visible and they give form at the same time. And whoever, as Sede Paiva says, controls the camera decides how we see and are seen. So it's a totally different photographic practice that we see than the chronophotographical gun that shaped the modernist view from today. So Cyclops is a dance with cables and eyes, and, as they say, a struggle for movement possibilities. In the performance, Sede Paiva and Nashika Natural seek appropriation, the refraction of light in the service of their perspective as Black protagonists. This was actually the first piece that I saw from Nashika Natural, and I saw it before I went into the performance of Worn and Felt. So after I was in that dark performance of Worn and Felt, I found out I actually met that performer before, but not on a stage where I could remember her better. I saw her in Cyclops. So this playing with darkness had a great impact on how I would remember the performer or the performer's movements. After Cyclops and after Worn and Felt, I started to follow Nashika Natural's work. So the next piece I saw was her first solo piece, also shown at Ballhaus Nauninstraße. It was called New Growth, shown in 2019. In a white cube, the standardized exhibition space for visual arts, Nashika Natural explored the relationship between representation and invisibility. And in her dance with hair, she plays with hair, but also dismantles the X-ray gaze that is put on black hair. Therefore, in the beginning of the performance, her entire head is covered with an afro, giving her a hard time to breathe underneath, making her sweat. The aesthetically interdimensional form of afro hair, as South African scholar Symmetry Erasmus calls it, falls outside the colonial norm. This fallout becomes a playful, determinative structure of the entire choreography in New Growth. So I show you a little trailer. In my research, I started to think about how to describe the movements. I remembered listening either to podcasts or the podcasts about interviews or other descriptions of maybe the piece New Growth or other pieces. And I found out that a closer movement analysis didn't take place. So I started to look closer. I was interested in how light her movements were, how fast she would walk or run through a space, and how she would place her body within her, within the character she kind of like designs, maybe for the piece New Growth, but also for the other piece. So it is not that she plays a character, but she works with movement in order to give maybe the topic New Growth a shape. And therefore, I started to follow her movements in terms of how is she using her feet, how does she walk, how does Nishika shapes the space, and how does Nishika interact with others. So during my research, I also found another piece, and here I would like to mention that it's not easy to find video material of all the artists that are working currently in Germany. There's not a platform where you can just like search for Black artists in Germany, dance, film, or whatever. Just by looking for one, you see the connections to other artists, to venues, but it's kind of like a difficult search, and not always videos are available. So the Ballhaus Nauninstraße has a Vimeo channel with some videos, but it's just trailers. So you can't just see the entire video online. So this is also a policy from the Ballhaus Nauninstraße. If you want to see Black artists on stage, go to the theater and see them live and explore them there. So I'm glad that I can show you some excerpts here online or at the keynote, but I would also want to highlight that whatever I show here is available online. So I don't show material from the artist that is not given away or that is prohibited to show online. So whatever is here can be found on Vimeo or on the artist's website. I think this is important to make sure that the rights of the material are clear, or the path where we look for material are clear. So I go to the next one, where I would like to show you an evening that did not take place at Ballhaus Nauninstraße, but at the Hebel am Ufer, Hau in Berlin in 2022. And it's an evening or a piece called Sonic Healing, and an evening that focuses on ancient healing methods as a form of resistance to anti-Black racism. And it features performances by two artists, Shannon Shear and Nashika Neshrill, that reflect on the ways in which for centuries marginalized groups have performed self-care in the face of systemic oppression. I will start.
And I like to talk to the Black people, the indigenous people, the people of color in the audience. Yes, I'm talking to you. I would like to address the Black people, the indigenous people, and yes, the people of color in the audience. Yes, I am looking at some of you. Yes, I believe in my creativity as a way of self-agency, and I believe in it too in you. That's why we will ask you one simple thing is to shout your words at us, shout your words at us, shout them in a minute, 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 in a minute. I want to hear your words. Just shout them to us and we will play with them in a little while. Words that you associate with love. I believe we are in Germany, so people are a little bit shy. I will encourage you to step up again. The light is still on us, so please don't feel like it's gonna turn into a spotlight. Thank you above. Empowerment. Yes, empowerment. Joy. I think, let's say sex. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Joy. Joy. Okay, so joy. Sex. Fashion. Empowerment. So like general empowerment, right? So we're creating something with that. Passion. Passion. Okay, like fashion can be. Okay. Passion, empowerment, joy, sex, self-care. Yes.
This was now maybe a clip of over 7 minutes, and I was hesitating if I should present online such a long clip, But on the other hand, I thought the element of time is exactly what a modernist violence ignores, to take time and to slowly watch a body moving and to see how movement develops in space and time. And I think the performance Sonic Healing makes that very visible in how far there's an exchange between sound, between two bodies, between two voices, and also the audience taking up interests from the audience, playing with it and making a dance, but not a dance or choreography that is set before, but a choreography or movement qualities that just are developed right now. So it was like a real-time choreography or real-time improvisation, choreography and improvisation to the sound or the sonic landscape that Shannon Shea would provide in that piece. Now we've seen different qualities from Nashika Nashville as a choreographer and as a dancer. And for me, it was until now very important to show you the diversity, the different perspectives, and the different venues. Black artists here in Berlin, only in Berlin. I did not even open up to all these other stages and important artists in Germany and the German-speaking countries like Austria and Switzerland. So just to see that how much, or to make visible how much opportunities are there to do research on Black dancers, Black performance artists, and that there is so much material and that there are so many just newly choreographed or invented artistic works that can be explored and that start to rewrite history. And I think it's just a great invitation for current generations, current researchers to use other perspectives to, for example, write a dance history anew, or also connected to cultural history in general. So when I look at the time, I have some other works I just want to show you as photographs, because Nashika Nashville, like many others, is not just making artworks for adults. She's also making artworks for children, and I think this is a very important step. This is a photograph from the piece Flip Flop. It's a piece for 2-year-old children, and it is playing with space, and it's playing with artists, how they can be playful bodies together or separately. And just like as an image, I won't go deeper into Flip Flop, but yeah, just to make visible that the audience starts very early. And it's about how to address children in terms of who can show things on stage and what can people show on stage. So just briefly, the Flip Flop piece had a length of 30 minutes, but for a younger audience, additional extra 15 minutes of interactive time for participative playing with the performers. And this is very important. In November 2023, last year, the production was awarded the Icarus Prize 2023 by the expert jury for the best production in the children's theater category. So Nashika Nashville not just choreographed for herself, she also started to choreograph for a larger group, like here for 6 performers with the piece Junctions 2 years ago, 2022. And there were performers you see on different stages and in different situations as well. So Amada Tinoco, Black Pearl, Kristen Fulama, Christopher Saint-Léon, Gabrielle van Veere, and Yvonne Sembene. And some of these performers are also connected to the Ballhaus Nauninstraße, for example. like Yvonne Sembene, who is currently also dancing in other pieces or starting to choreograph as well. Then we have also Black Pearl, who is a transgender artist and who used to be a male Black ballet dancer, only working in the ballet world. And then coming to Berlin and starting to explore the voguing world and also performing at the Ballhaus Nauninstraße. And Christopher Saint-Laurent is a member of the House of Saint-Laurent. It's a voguing, artistic voguing group that is based in Berlin. And so you see there like intertwinings, interweavings of different artistic voices, but also different venues that come together. So here I just wanted to show that it's impossible to just like have one narrative of how and where Black German dance or performance take place by whom. So it's so interwoven that it might need a roundabout thinking to write history instead of a fast lane that and a linear thinking that we have in other stories or histories. I would like to come back to the white shadow and back to Mr. Backlash and back to the conference topic, joy and pain. There is a necessity of healing, but how and who does it? And what are the offerings? What are the demands? Turning towards the white shadow and staring back might be exactly the energy that enables to unleash forces as we can read and sense them in Black German thoughts and activities. So what can be unleashed? I'm thinking about ecology as in a roundabout. So a roundabout is also something that helps to reduce stress in traffic, or decoloniality as a multi-directional form of memory, or intersectionality as an constellated agency in terms of a singular and not as a singular agency. So there are hopes for Black performative research within German research institutions. That means to sense, not just gaze, acknowledging the unknown, not suspicion, understanding first, not critique first, trying nearness, not establishing distancing, shared location, not forced dislocation. We heard earlier in the keynote of Peggy Pische about the question of translation. So we were navigating between German and English. Since there are many other languages, why not try to translate again? Takandere uwich. I have a privilege as a Black German to build up on all the work that had been done in Black German scholarly. So I'm using this opportunity, being right now working temporary at an institutional affiliation at the Freie Universität Berlin, to interweave situated knowledge and written knowledge. As a Senegalese German, I grew up with my Senegalese father, being accompanied by him until today here in Germany, but I never learned the language Wolof. So I used the opportunity of being a dance researcher with African descent to learn Wolof now and interweave research communities. White shadow means in Wolof, Takandere buwich. Together with my Wolof teacher, Diagne Diallo, teaching Wolof, but being a Pearl himself, I can provide a translation of Laya Okongo's poem, which I would like to share. Unfortunately, I don't feel strong enough yet to read Wolof the way I would like to listen to it from my voice. So I asked a dear friend and colleague, Marie-Helene Pereira, Senior Curator at the Haus der Kulturen der Welt, together with working with Bonaventure So Beijing Dikung, was so kind to record her voice while reading the translation. So I would like to end my talk with her voice.
takkandeer bu weex. Am na benn takkandeer bu weex. Mu ngi may xelal, mu ngi may wax. Am na benn takkandeer bu weex. Mu ngi may yemale, mu ngi may natt, mu ngi may peese, mu ngi may bàyyi xel. Am na benn takkandeer bu weex. Mu ngi may wax kan wala lan moo rafet. Kan moo am xel, lan mooy xel. Ak kan wala lan mooy farlu, njëriñ, yenu maanaa. Am na benn takkandeer bu weex moo may wodd, di ma dundal, di ma jàngal. Am na benn takkandeer bu weex, bés bu nekk ma dàq ko, waaye duma bàyyi. Am na benn takkandeer bu weex, luy xew bu ma ko gestoo.
What if I turn and look at him? Thank you very much for your presence.
And thank you very much for an extraordinarily thought-provoking and beautiful keynote today. I think there's a lot to talk about and a lot of interesting paths we can go down in this upcoming conversation. And I welcome everyone again to submit your questions via the Q&A. I would like to start with a question while we're waiting for the Q&A to populate. And it has to do with the figure of the white shadow, or Mr. Backlash, which I like both of those references. They're both very visual references too. I was wondering if you could speak a bit more to the idea of facing him. So is this using him as some sort of referent or stand-in for example, the white gaze, the white male, cishet gaze, etc.? Is it in an effort to counter any narrative or discourse he stands for? Is it someone to ignore or to work against, or where does he sort of fit in to the way that you're thinking about the performance aspect, as a reaction or as a counter or as a something to him?
Thank you, Emily, for that question. Yes, the white shadow or Mr. Backlash are, like on first sight, very abstract, but they refer to something I would call it an uncanny feeling. So if you, in any kind of way, as you mentioned, like, for example, all these sub-existence under the gaze of the gaze that shaped Western thought and imagery, let's call it male cishet gaze. This gaze produces an uncanniness whenever one encounters maybe a situation, an image, or and this is, of course, what Du Bois also refers to, the double consciousness, one's own image, looking into the mirror. So there is even, for sometimes, the impossibility to see oneself without a layer of visualities that are kind of like prefigures of how one should see oneself. And we can, of course, detach that from maybe Black experience by just looking at advertisement right now. How does the body have to look right? We have like an extreme trend towards like self-optimization and being kind of like almost robot-like to survive what capitalism demands, like an always ever being able to be available to the market. And coming to dance, this idea of that figure that the white shadow is shaping, like when we go back to Okongo's poem, is something that during modernity was shaped by dance research itself. So the famous figure Rudolf von Laban, who was a very important figure in modern dance, and how the free dance or expressionist dance could develop itself in Germany and Europe, was the person who would also develop an effort shape system, or more effort system that would connect to Taylorism. So in order to bring efficiency to workers at factories. So movement, or doing research on movement in a certain situation or constellation, is always connected to a certain gaze. But the question is, how powerful is the gaze, or how much power do we give to that gaze? And I think the white shadow or Mr. Backlash are attempts to actually speak out that there is this gaze, and this gaze is as strong as a person, as a figure that is sitting next to me in a subway, or confronting me in other daily situations, for example, trying to find an apartment. So this there is this counter narrative, and I brought the Wolof translation in because Takender means in Wolof not just shadow, it also means child. So the Takender is a figure of thought that reminds you there's always someone else. So the child is not a shadow like the white shadow or Mr. Backlash. The child is someone watching you, someone needing to be like a shadow to learn. The Takandere can also be a teacher, can also be your mother or your father or other relatives. It can be a shadow figure that is connected to you, that can double you, that can reflect upon you, or also could be a negative figure as well. So in Wolof, there is not a negative or positive connotation only. And that's why I think this broadening the translation process is so important, to get out of the dichotomy of black and white, dark and light. And because of the dichotomical thinking is very much something that comes from the Western Enlightenment and Kant and Hegel, and to think in polarities. And so performance or performative thinking could break or intervene into this polarity and in this dichotomy. For example, from a research perspective, trying to retranslate. Yes.
I love that imagery of the child as the shadow, and it does complicate that binary very much. Good. Well, we have one question here so far, so everyone get going. All right. Thank you for this wonderful talk, this person writes, and the presentation. I would like to ask you to talk a bit more about relational aspects of strength and vulnerability in dance, theater, and its scholarship. I'm grateful for the reading and artist recommendations. Thank you very much for your inspiring translation. It was so amazing to have it read out by your friend. So the question is about relational aspects of strength and vulnerability in dance, theater, and its scholarship.
Yes, thank you very much for that question, and also that you also like the translation. The relational aspect of strength and vulnerability is a very complicated one, because, and we had that just like in other talks right now in Berlin, for example, there is kind of like a need for vulnerability in order to be able to be on stage, because one does make oneself vulnerable by being seen at, also by producing art with one's own body. And the body is very much an instrument that can get hurt, that can have injuries, that is also not just a functioning machine with bones and flesh, but also a mind. So how strong is the mind on stage? And strength and vulnerability are maybe oscillating, because one does have to make oneself vulnerable in terms of maybe open to either, for example, work with a choreographer who has a certain vision and would like the performers to work out this vision with their bodies. So one needs to be kind of like open to jump into the unknown on stage or within a performative action. We tend to say that strength comes out of it, and the more you are able to be vulnerable, the more strength you get, or one can gain to kind of like keep performing. But this is of course not the case. Every now and then there comes this question of, is it possible to be vulnerable each way anew? And also, and especially when it comes, for example, to also to scholarship, to maybe a Black German perspective that now gets much more attention than it used to. There's the question of how much do I need to make myself vulnerable in order to present the vulnerability of either my ancestors or the performers, for example, I want to talk about. So how much do I open up from myself, but also from others, to present the strength that lies within the fact being marginalized in a normative dominant society. So this form of resistance that is necessary is connected with a vulnerability, and of course refers to a certain strength, but it's always the question of how far it's necessary to use or present, show that vulnerability, and at what point is it possible to talk about artistic qualities that can talk about this relational aspect of being strong as a marginalized person, and at the same time showing that there's an openness and vulnerability for one's own position, but also being seen as an artist that produces art that can be critiqued, that is able to make mistakes and get a second, third, and fourth chance. We're not really there yet, either in research or in performative practices, that there is this feeling of I'm allowed to make a mistake.
Yes, thank you for that question and for your answer. I wanted to go back to this, or go to, I suppose, the question of the gaze. So the gaze, whatever we want to, however we want to sort of use adjectives to describe it, occurs both in the creation of the piece, right? In that, you know, moment of imagining the audience, I suppose, but also in the actual performance with the actual observers and the actual audience. Can you speak to the sort of the difference there or how that works?
Yes, thank you. The gaze is, I think, something or a term that needs to be reflected in exactly the way that you asked the question, because of course the gaze is a fundamental part of theater. And that's how theater history also worked for a long time, is about the gaze and the spectator, and later the role of the spectator, and then participatory performances came into play so that the spectator can be looked at the same time too. And then performances or performance makers saw the urgency to highlight that it's not just about the sight, the vision, the dominant sense that we can feel, can smell, that we can touch, and also be part or also be able to perceive dance or a performance. So that's what the piece Worn and Felt also tried to do, get people the opportunity to feel performance and dance by touch and not by sight. But there is a difficult interplay because, as you said, the gaze is a part of the creation of the piece. It's a part of the imaginary or imagining a piece to be performed, and at the performance act itself. And so these questions of how to be sensitive with the gaze cannot always be answered in a way that everybody's happy. So the Ballhaus Nauninstraße maybe tried the best right now to really be aware of that gaze, so that performers know that somebody who is watching the performers from the positions of technicians, that these technicians have also their migrant history and story. So this also alters the gaze when they arrange the stage for stories that are similar to the stories of their life, even though they are not performers, but technicians or working at the front desk or guiding people through the theater. So that is an attempt to really work with that gaze and its different functions.
Thank you so much. Our previous question asker writes, thank you so much for responding so beautifully. This was so enriching and thought-provoking, protecting the self without isolating. I love it. And we have a new question too. So thank you again for your fascinating presentation. Can you expand your ideas about roundabout thinking and how it demands that we slow down the experience of moving and sight? You seem to suggest that in dance, one enters the five senses experience, but are there more sources of intersection?
Yes, thank you for that question, especially about the roundabout. The roundabout thinking is for me connected to writing and to accessing biographies, artistic signatures, in terms of Black artists, for example, in Berlin, but trying to not create a ontology where one says, well, this artist belongs to that category, like Black in Germany, but not German, or then there's another category, Jamaican maybe, or this is, this is what happens right now when it comes to archiving, when it comes to research methods. So the roundabout thinking connected to, yes, slowing down and being more sensitive towards the dominant sense of sight, of vision, is an attempt or an experiment for myself too, to allow what one would maybe call more of how would you call that, maybe associative thinking, to just pick whatever comes. This is sometimes also a critique, so that whenever it comes to intersectional readings, research, this and that connects, and it looks like there's not a clear path. And what I thought is, how could a theoretical thinking or methodology look like that does not even try to find a clear path, but allows to think in circles and entries and detours, and still write history, but not in terms of there needs to be a lineage that can be traced down to, I don't know, Aristoteles or so. Because of course, at least due to colonialism, it's impossible. So how do we start without always having the lack of, well, there's a stop, we cannot go deeper, or we cannot have a clear path to a rooted thinking that might have shaped and dominated a Western thinking so much. And if I understood it correctly, like, are there more sources of intersection? I think in dance, artists are much more exploring how to make this intersection. For example, there's an artist that is currently working in Berlin. Her name is Angela Alves, and she she used to be a dancer and dance researcher, but many years ago she got the diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. So she tried to create performances that allow her, being sometimes in a condition of not being able to do anything, still create a piece. So some of her pieces bring different abilities on stage. So you don't have, like, for example, an audio description in the end. The audio interpreted is on stage, part of the piece. So to make sure that all the senses are addressed and all the abilities and capacities to perceive with different senses, some stronger, some weaker or not existent, are equal. But these performances need a lot of time and, of course, money. And this is still a problem. So the easiest way to make performances is the normative way, of course. Yeah.
Wow, thank you for your question, and again for your answer. Excuse me. I was wondering if you could speak about, so it seems like what you're asking more of us to do is to go into our research endeavors, go into life, just kind of listening to our bodies and listening and focusing on our other senses, other than just like our logical kind of thinking, to explore and to find connections that are just not normative. And so to do so would require that we listen to our bodies more, a lot more than probably that we're doing now. And to do so would also, I mean, and also to then focus on not just what people are saying or what people are saying, but also how the body, how people's bodies interact and act in various spaces. So I was wondering, for the benefit of, we have many students here, if you wouldn't mind talking about why that is so important, not to search for an origin, not to claim some sort of original moment of sort of a thought blossoming or something like that, and to talk about what is at stake. Should we continue to abide by this sort of linear line of thinking?
Yes, thank you for that question, and especially also mentioning that it's needed to give an answer for perspectives that are starting to get shape. So because that's the big question of the canon and how to deal with the canon and how to formulate one's own perspective and find a place and a voice, or shaping a voice. And I think I would or my suggestion for this maybe approach comes from also the question of how do I deal with exhaustion. And I think the roundabout is maybe a very good visual example. So always finding a faster way to a newer insight, to find a new origin, to highlight something that no one had been talking about yet, is exhausting, and it's reproducing a way of looking at the world that brought us to where we are right now in terms of capitalism, of course, but also colonialism, in terms of finding places no one has been before, ignoring that people have lived there for centuries. And I think this step is one that speeded up science a lot, and research as a practice of encountering with the world. But it comes to an end. It's either the exhaustion of the environment, it's an exhaustion of people doing research, it's an exhaustion also of being researched at. So because the reflex of the performance from the performative side is, of course, to produce new stuff more and more, to not repeat oneself, because the audience needs always something new. And if there is maybe a strong counter perspective from indigenous ways of moving and formulating theory, then it's actually not inventing something new all the time, but inventing by being in touch and in exchange with the existing. And of course, there is this saying, history repeats itself, which also means that nothing did occur for the first time, but I still think it's important to allow these circles of like being in a roundabout and passing the entrance once again, but maybe making a new detour now and finding another path, and the ability and the possibility to come back and see the same thing with a new perspective. And there are these like re-perspectives, and this of course can become a method too, but somehow to allow oneself to stumble rather than to march into the field can also take away the pressure, and the pressure one encounters another human being, for example, like, oh wow, you did a great performance, so give more to me that I can do better research, or so. This happens. And this is not enjoyable for anyone, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's brilliant. Yeah. Well, I feel like I need to do the millennial like podcast thing and ask you where people can find you and follow your work and find your book and that sort of thing.
Well, this is like my research is spread out and not connected, and this is something that can be changed. But for now, some of my like at least research titles, ideas can be found on the website of my university, or the university I'm working at, and online, yes. But I don't have my own website yet. But if I do, I will be happy to send you a link with text.
Wonderful. All right, so everyone go to Google Scholar and search for her name. Well, thank you very much for this incredible hour and a half. And there's so much to continue to talk about and to think about, and I hope that we can continue the conversation in one way or another going forward. And thanks everyone for joining us. We're going to take about a 13-minute break, come back at 2:15 for our first panel. So thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.